A very good evening to you with a Thursday, February 1st edition of the CBC Evening News. I'm Ryan Broom. In our top story, the central bank's latest release on the country's economic performance has come as no real surprise to the Barbados Private Sector Association. The BPSA says the report confirmed its expectations that there will be improvements in the tourism sector and stability in other trade-related sectors. However, the organization's CEO Anne Reid says fears that the budgetary measures introduced last year would not have the desired effect were also realized.
After the May 2017 budget, the BPSA stated its concern that the measures would not close the deficit as projected as the economy would slow. And while the new tax measures would increase government revenue, other sources of revenue would decline and reduce the impact. And so this is why the response of the private sector at that time was, it was a budget with pain but no gain. Well, the governor of the central bank has essentially confirmed this position.
Now, the BPSA strongly agrees with statements made by Acting Central Bank Governor Cleviston Haynes that government needs to improve its tax collection scheme and curb its spending. There was also no opposition to the recommendation that investment projects needed to get off the ground faster and that greater effort must go into facilitating business activity. According to Ms. Reid, the BPSA also offered suggestions, even though it believes they may be hampered by the upcoming general elections.
The BPSA strongly recommends that the government enters into negotiations with a suitable multilateral for a loan facility that will provide security to foreign reserves and may give a short-term reduction in interest payments. Guidance on these negotiations will be evident from the recently finalized IMF Article 4 consultation, which we hope that we will see in the near future. However, we do acknowledge that the imminent elections may prevent immediate negotiations.
Central Bank Governor Cleviston Haynes says there are some advantages to entering a program with the International Monetary Fund, or IMF. He made the comment in response to questions following his presentation of Barbados' Economic Review for 2017.
One of the advantages of an IMF approach is that it helps to catalyze resources from other lenders, which therefore it's not just the resources that you get from the IMF, but it helps to unlock resources from other international financial institutions and possibly also from the private sector. So in that respect, there are some advantages in taking an approach from the IMF.
Now, Mr. Haynes reiterated that ultimately any decision to engage or not engage the IMF would have to be made by government. He says in the meantime, there are things that we need to do to aim for an improvement in the island's fiscal position.
What we need, I think, is to be able to move quickly in order to boost our reserves. That to my mind, is where we have to focus. We cannot allow our reserves to continue to decline all the time. So we have to be able to boost our reserves, and therefore we have to work towards getting those capital flows that will enable us to rebuild the reserves to levels which people feel comfortable and confident.
In other news, the time has come for the establishment of an independent committee to deal with complaints against police officers. That's the belief of Independent Senator Alwyn Adams. He says up until now, the force has dealt with any complaints against its members internally, but with the possibility of increased police power under the Police Amendment Bill, Senator Adams believes this would provide reassurance to those opposing the move.
The police should perhaps have representation on it or not, but even if they are present, the independence of the commission ought not to be compromised. And that the public should be made clear through education and public relations what their rights are, how they are to react in dealing with the police, and how, if they feel that aggrieved, how they ought to go about making complaints against the police.
Government is aware that some of the buildings owned and occupied by the state are in less than optimal condition. This admission from Minister of Labour, Senator Dr. Esther Bayer-Sakou. However, she says government has been taking steps to address these problems.
We do want all our workers to be comfortably housed so that they can be healthy, first of all, and then be productive. It is why we built the buildings at Baobab Towers, Warren's Towers, and so on, so that we could move workers out of those less satisfactory conditions that some of them had been in. So, for example, you know that we'd move folks out of the old National Insurance building as well. So we are mindful that we do have concerns with some of our buildings. There is a cost involved in making changes to that, but we are certainly doing it.
Now, the minister's comments come in light of an announcement that immigration workers will be working half-day to protest the conditions they're currently housed in while they await new accommodation. Dr. Bayer-Sakou says government conducted an assessment of all its buildings before proclaiming the Safety and Health Act, but it was possible that the condition of some buildings had changed since then. She says while she understands the positions of both parties, she's suggesting that the act clearly states the process by which certain issues are to be dealt with.
Section 104 is not just to be cited as candidly as that. No, there is a process by which Section 104 is to be applied. So that before I can say, well, I'm not coming into work because the building is unsafe, there are certain procedures that have to be done to establish that this building is unsafe and poses a threat. But all I know from my position is that the new accommodations for the Immigration Department are being prepared.
We take a pause here, but we have news about the island schools after the break. Welcome back. Well, young people at one of the island schools have received a much-needed boost in the area of literacy, made possible through the collaborative efforts of a number of entities. According to one educator, it comes at a time when the state of literacy in Barbados is declining. Lorna Jones has more.
Students at the Deacons Primary School will now be able to start a new chapter in their quest for literacy. This after a new school library was opened during an official dedication ceremony. Called the Shirley Marshall Library, it is dedicated to a retired principal of the school who has about 4 decades of experience in education. Ms. Marshall is an advocate for reading and has concerns about the current state of literacy in Barbados.
Are we really serious about reading? What has happened to our library? I was doing a bit of research about our library. It is the oldest one out of, I think, 6. There's some one in Guyana, St. Vincent, St. Lucia. These libraries were set up by Mr. Andrew Carnegie, and ours is the oldest. And as far as I understand, the only one that isn't functioning in the building is just there. So I don't know if I could put a little plug for the people who helped me to get this one, if they would help us with our public library.
Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Education, Senator Harcourt Husbands, encouraged students to utilize the library, saying his own experience as a youth made a significant impact on his life.
Because of reading and because of the love I developed for reading, as a result of that, I could envision myself in the position that I'm in today.
The library was made possible through the collaborative efforts of many friends of the school. These include the Maria Holder Trust, the Sandoz Foundation, Sagicor, and the Urban Development Commission. Finance Minister Chris Sinclair, who is also the MP for the area, commended them for their efforts.
We kind of individualize and parse ourselves out, but it shows what the power of partnership and working together can achieve. And this is the excellent example.
General Manager of Sandoz Barbados Resorts, Ferry Seafinger, says that their foundation was happy to play a part.
We are really honored to be here and to be part of this fantastic project. To have a library named after you is really an honor. And I heard Mrs. Marshall speak, and you can hear that she is a leader and she has touched a lot of persons in the community.
Following the ceremony, the building was blessed by St. Stephen's Anglican Church Rector, Canon George Harewood, before officials and guests had a tour of the new facility. Lorna Jones, CBC News.
Thanks so much, Lorna. It's taken 5 years, but St. Jude's Primary School has finally gotten its reward for a competition it won in 2013. The much-awaited prize is now on display for all to see. Sharika Griffith was present for the handing over ceremony and filed this report.
Back in 2013, St. Jude's Primary entered an environmental sustainability competition hosted by the Seroptimus International of Jamestown, and they won. Their prize, a gazebo erected on the school grounds. But for the last few years, they've had to make do with bragging rights while they awaited construction of their prize.
We have been trying to have this gazebo built now for the last 5 years, but we've had to go through the correct procedure of determining the lay of the land and if it was for the school, encompassing the land, getting it all encompassed into the actual lay of the school.
Her comments came during a handing over ceremony at the school. Since the competition, many of the students, teachers, and even the principal who were involved in the project have moved on. The school's new principal, Undine Shorey, says those involved were naturally impatient to see the culmination of their hard work.
There's a saying, good things come to those who wait. We've waited a long time, and we know that we have achieved, or we will be receiving officially, an excellent building, one of beauty, one of stature, one that we will treasure since we have waited so long.
Senior Education Officer Christina Morris says the officials in the Ministry of Education are aware that they cannot do it all on their own. The ministry therefore welcomes support from non-governmental organizations.
Certainly, I'm sure that you're all aware of the economic climate that we are in. And even when we are in good economic times, we fully welcome and embrace the contribution made by non-governmental organizations, by members of the private sector, who are usually keen to come on board and assist us in various ways.
The project is estimated to cost around $8,000. Sharika Griffith, CBC News.
Thanks, Sharika. Well, the Faculty of Sport at the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus will be expanding its course offerings this year. Its dean, Dr. Akshay Mansingh, says a new bachelor-level program is set to come on stream from September. He was speaking as the campus signed its second Memorandum of Understanding with Sagicor Life Incorporated.
We're introducing new programs because the Faculty of Sport's job is to provide programs to help with the upliftment of sports, not just sportsmen. And one of the first programs that we're looking at is the sports coaching program. So BSc in sports coaching that we hope to be starting in September, and to expand the sports science program that started here to the other campuses. But what is evident is that no matter where we're doing the sports science programs, people will have to come to Cave Hill to do part of their training because this is where the facility resides.
Now, like the first MOU, Principal Professor Udine Barato says the funding from this second one will help to further develop the Faculty of Sport and its students.
We invested in state-of-the-art equipment for the biomechanics, exercise physiology, and strength and conditioning labs. Students, of course, benefited from having all these features in their respective courses and also in the sporting disciplines. We completed sports facilities upgrades at the Usain Bolt Sports Complex. We sent a number of sports science students to spend a semester at the University of New Brunswick, our partner university.
And Executive Vice President for Sagicor Life, Edward Clark, says the company is proud to be associated with the university. He says the facility offers several opportunities for citizens and hopes it will continue to be maintained at its high standards.
I think it is important that many of our young people have another opportunity. Everybody cannot excel into the linguistics or the sciences or things like that, or business. But I think the sports side of the discipline of sports management and dealing with sports is much needed in the region.
In other news, public officials in Barbados should pay closer attention to integrity in public life. This was a sentiment of former Chief Justice and Attorney General of Barbados, Sir David Simmons, as he delivered a politically informative feature address at a dinner to celebrate the Rotary Club of Barbados' South's 32nd anniversary last night at the Accra Beach Hotel. During his speech, he stressed that the main principle in public life was that holders of public office should act solely in terms of the public interest.
In that prescription is that being a minister is a full-time occupation. That is why people who practice a profession must relinquish it on appointment to ministerial office. You have to give it up. You cannot purport to practice your private profession and at the same time exercise public office.
Sir David then outlined his view of good governance.
A good government will always ensure that it adheres to and gives primacy to the rule of law. Remember, John Locke, the great philosopher, said about 1690, wherever law ends, tyranny begins. Now, accountability is the principle that applies whether we deal with good governance or integrity in public life. And I would offer that as my second principle.
Despite concerns, Chief Agricultural Officer Lennox Chandler is convinced young Barbadians will continue to be a part of agriculture. Now, while not all young people will be involved in the industry, he believes attention should be given to those that are interested.
I hear people always talking about get youth involved in agriculture. Nobody don't want to do anything to involve youth to get involved in law or medicine or accounting or nothing else. People will get involved in the things they want to get involved in. I don't care how much encouragement you put out there. If people are interested, they're not interested. You know, what we need to do is to focus on those people who are interested and move them forward instead of trying to see if we can get every youth in Barbados involved in agriculture. It's not going to happen. Those who have the interest will come forward and demonstrate the interest.
Well, still to come, stories making headlines across the region. Welcome back. Well, the governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Timothy Antoine, says the financial outlook for the OECS is generally positive, but is warning that significant reforms are required to expedite the pace of economic growth.
ECCB Governor Timothy Antoine has painted a positive outlook for the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, but has tempered his position with calls for urgent reform and job creation. He says the optimism stems from last year's 3.7% growth in the global economy and ongoing rehabilitation works in hurricane-hit countries.
In terms of growth, our target is 5%. Last year we did around 2.3%, and we have to point out that prior to the hurricanes, we were projecting to do over 3%. The hurricanes were a major setback, and we project at this point preliminary results that we probably did about 2.3%. Next year, well, 2018, we anticipate that will start to pick up, and certainly by 2019 we should be well in excess of 3% in terms of growth. With respect to our debt to GDP ratio, our target is 60%, and our target is to get there by 2030. At the moment, our debt to GDP ratio for the currency union is 70.2.
The governor has sounded the resilience call on the heels of a 2017 hurricane season that dealt devastating blows to a few member states. He says given the vulnerability of the region to natural disasters, resilience is crucial.
Frankly spoken, we cannot rebuild after a hurricane, which takes 20 years or more of our hard-earned gains, have that wiped out in a few hours and have to start all over again. That's difficult, it is demoralizing, it can be very challenging, and therefore we have to build resilience in what we do.
The governor also spoke of the most pressing challenges facing St. Lucia. They include youth unemployment and crime.
Former President of Guyana, Bharat Jagdeo, may be called to testify at the Presidential Commission of Inquiry into the extrajudicial killings of over 1,000 people. The killings spanned a period of 10 years.
If he's called to testify, an impassively speaking Jagdeo says he's ready.
So I would love to have a commission of inquiry into the troubled period.
More than 1,000 civilians, including political activist Ronald Waddell and the then Agriculture Minister Satyajit Osor, were killed under the watch of Mr. Jagdeo. Jagdeo had claimed that the February 2002 jailbreak of 5 prisoners were responsible for most of the killings.
So let's have this COI by all means. By all means. But let us have proper terms of reference and let us have credible commissioners.
Jagdeo's then Home Affairs Minister Ronald Godraj had been widely accused of facilitating a state-funded death squad. A known member of that death squad had spoken to Nightly News. He had suggested that Godraj had been the Don.
I know me boss was Ronald Godraj, but I never speak to Ronald Godraj personally. But I used to get the hardest inside the headquarters.
Who was your boss?
Right? Well, the boss was a man named Axel Williams, who I work under. When these guys, late in the night, you would see fire, people burn up, people in car and the seawall and these things. And we used to go after these people, including the police, not we alone. The police was a part of it. You used to get guns from the police, Travis. I used to go and play for gun from CID headquarters, a machine gun.
Also under the watch of Mr. Jagdeo, convicted drug lord Shahid Roger Khan was caught with 6 ex-policemen in a bulletproof vehicle with high-powered guns and a wiretapping device. Former Health Minister Leslie Ramsamy was set to be the purchaser of that equipment. With all this and more untold stories, Jagdeo is ready to take the stand.
That not a single criminal will find any political support, whether they come from our base or not, in the People's Progressive Party. We have an unambiguous position on crime.
Now over in the Bahamas, 4 women, one of whom is pregnant, and 2 juvenile females have been charged with the stabbing death of a 19-year-old woman last week.
A high-security presence at the South Street Magistrates Court Wednesday as 6 females accused of murder were arraigned. Police cars blocked the entrance and exit of the court, creating a very controlled environment for those entering or exiting. Shackled, the 6, including 2 juveniles whose faces are concealed, emerged from the Nassau Street Police Station. The suspects, 20-year-old Thea Williams of Wolf Road in the blue and black top, 20-year-old Zaria Burrows of East Street South in the gray hoodie, 19-year-old Devanya Ladders of Watland Street in the white top, 20-year-old Devonique Edwards, also of Watland Street, in the gray T-shirt, and 2 juveniles ages 16 and 17 years were also in the number. The group appeared before Chief Magistrate Joyanne Ferguson Pratt. It's alleged that the females intentionally caused the death of 19-year-old Brianne Mackey. The victim was stabbed multiple times about the body at Key West Street. Attorney Gina Morley, who represents Burrows, informed the court that a client is on seizure medication, which she presented to the court, and also informed the magistrate that the 20-year-old was pregnant. An angry mob gathered in the parking lot of the court and hurled insults at the accused after they exited. They were not required to enter a plea to the charge. Now, all of the defendants are expected back in court on March 14th, where they will be served with voluntary bill of indictment papers. That means the matter will be fast-tracked to the Supreme Court for trial. Until then, the ladies will be remanded to the Bahamas Department of Corrections.
Well, a glimpse into the world of sports is up next with Anne-Marie Burt, but first, here's a tip from Cooperators General Insurance.
This tip of the day is brought to you by Cooperators General Insurance Company Limited. Insurance the way you want it to be.
Marijuana can negatively affect a driver's attentiveness, perception of time and speed, judgment and coordination, increasing their likelihood of being involved in an accident. This tip is brought to you in association with the National Council on Substance Abuse, promoting drug awareness.